Ever hit that point where you realize you're basically playing catch up with tech skills? Like, just trying to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, feels like the learning never stops.
Totally. Well, get ready because today we're diving into a field where that whole staying ahead thing isn't optional. It's practically the job description. We're talking ICT capacity planning. Ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah. It's crucial, but often flies under the radar, wouldn't you say? To help us unpack everything, we've got this awesome career guide from RoleCatcher. Really breaks it down.
Perfect. So, not talking about planning like the office holiday party, right?
Right.
What's the deal with this capacity thing?
Think of it less party planning, more like imagine being the architect, but for a city's digital growth, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
These ICT capacity planners, they're the ones making sure all those computer systems can handle whatever we throw at them. Emails, video calls, online shopping sprees, all that digital stuff happening smoothly, it's because of them.
So instead of roads and bridges, it's servers and networks, right? Keeping that digital traffic flowing.
You got it. But here's the thing that surprised me reading through this role catcher guide. It's not just about reacting to what's happening right now.
Really? I thought that's exactly what it'd be. What else is there?
They've got to be proactive, thinking ahead. The guide really emphasizes that. These planners, they're analyzing trends, forecasting growth, the whole 9 yards, making sure systems are ready for what's next, not just what's now.
Wow, that's wild. Like predicting the future of internet traffic jams or something. Sounds like you need some serious analytical skills for that.
Oh, absolutely. Data analysis is key. But, and here's where it gets interesting, the guide also talks about the importance of something you might not expect, psychology.
Psychology. Now that's a curveball. What do they need to analyze? User behavior.
You got it.
Yeah.
Spot on. ICT capacity planners, they need to understand how we behave online, our peak usage times, the apps we rely on most. They use all that to optimize systems and prevent those digital bottlenecks before they even happen.
That's actually really cool. It's one thing to have like enough bandwidth, but making sure it's there when and where it's needed most, that's next level.
Right. It's all connected. And speaking of connections, the guide really emphasizes communication skills in this field too. Not just tech talk, but explaining it all in a way anyone can understand.
Makes sense. What good's a brilliant capacity plan if no one else gets it, right?
Exactly. You've got to bridge that gap between the tech world and, well, everyone else.
Totally. So we've got the analytical skills, the communication chops, but let's be real, tech changes faster than like almost anything.
Yeah.
How do these planners keep up?
That's where the constant learning comes in. The guide goes in depth on this. It's not a learn it once kind of career, more like always be learning.
Yeah.
Conferences, new tools, the whole deal.
So it's not like you ever truly arrive always leveling up those skills.
Exactly. And ICT infrastructure itself, that's a huge constantly changing thing. We're talking networks, servers, cloud computing.
Right. It's not just one piece of software you master and you're good. Speaking of mastering things, the guide also lays out a clear career path in this field, from entry level all the way up to those senior positions. Seem like there's a lot of room to grow.
Oh, definitely. You could start really specialized, maybe focusing on network capacity, then branch out as you gain experience. Cloud capacity, security capacity.
It's like choosing your own adventure, but in the tech world. And speaking of adventures, the guide doesn't shy away from the job hunt either. They even provide sample interview questions and tips, which is incredibly helpful.
I love that about it. It's super practical, not just telling you what the job is, but how to actually land it.
So you've got your resume polished, you're brushing up on all the tech terms, but those interview questions, those can be brutal. What's the guide's top tip for absolutely acing those interviews?
Well, it all comes down to showcasing those problem-solving skills, really driving that point home. Interviewers, they want to hear about actual situations you faced, capacity-related challenges, and how you tackled them.
So not just saying I'm a problem solver, but more like here's how I solved this specific problem. Show, don't tell.
Exactly. And the guide even gives you some examples of what they might ask about. Imagine getting hit with, tell me about a time you had to troubleshoot a major capacity bottleneck. How'd you approach it?
Yeah, that's getting down to brass tacks. I bet having a few good stories ready to go would make a huge difference. What kind of example would really knock their socks off in that situation?
You know, one thing the guide highlights is how important impact is. Not just what you did, but what it meant. Did your solution, like prevent a total system meltdown during a huge sale? Or maybe you saved the company a bunch of money by optimizing how resources were used.
Oh, that's smart. Highlighting the value you brought, not just the actions you took.
Right. It all ties back to that communication piece we were talking about. You're explaining something technical in a way that shows its real-world effect. Even if the interviewer isn't a tech whiz, they get it.
It's like translating tech speak into business results. I like it. Now, the guide also mentions interviewers often ask about staying up to date, with the newest tech and trends. What's a really strong answer look like for that one?
It's about going beyond the obvious,
Mm.
like, yeah, mentioning conferences and those industry magazines is good, but the guide suggests taking it a step further. Have you played around with any new capacity planning tools in your free time? Maybe even tried out a new methodology at your old job that made things more efficient.
So it's not just knowing what's new, it's about actively using that knowledge.
That's it. It shows real initiative, a passion for the field, that always be learning thing we talked about. It shines through.
It's like the difference between reading about cooking and actually trying a new recipe.
Perfect analogy.
Okay, let's dig into the career path a bit more. The guide does a fantastic job of breaking down those different stages in an ICT capacity planner's career. We've touched on it, but can you walk us through the typical things you'd be doing at each level? Let's start with someone just entering the field.
Totally. So at the entry level, picture yourself like an apprentice. You're working closely with those more experienced planners, really getting your hands dirty with data, a lot of learning about how to monitor those IT service levels, creating reports that track all the important stuff.
So a lot of absorbing information, building that solid base. It sounds like a really good way to get a broad understanding of how all these systems work together.
It really is. And then as you move up to junior ICT capacity planner, you get more responsibility for actually creating those short-term, medium-term, and long-term capacity plans. Remember those.
Oh, right. I think it'd be helpful to remind everyone what those different timeframes actually mean in this context.
You bet. So short-term planning, that might be making sure there's enough server power to deal with a jump in traffic during a big marketing push, for example.
Mhm.
Medium term could be looking at growth over the next year or two, maybe figuring out if you need more network bandwidth or server upgrades.
So it's a balancing act, reacting to those immediate needs, but also thinking ahead. And what about long-term planning? Doesn't that feel kind of like predicting the future of tech?
Kind of, yeah. It's definitely thinking big picture. You're factoring in those emerging technologies, how user behavior might change,
Mm.
making sure the organization's tech setup is flexible enough to handle whatever the next 5, even 10 years might throw at it.
Whoa, that's a lot of pressure, but also pretty amazing to be shaping the tech landscape like that.
It's a cool feeling, for sure. And as you gain experience, really master those different planning levels.
Huh.
You'll probably move into a full-fledged ICT capacity planner role.
No more junior this or that. You've made it. What does that shift in responsibility look like?
That's where you really step into leadership. You're not just contributing to plans anymore. You're designing the whole capacity strategy for the organization,
Right.
working with all the different departments, making recommendations to the higher-ups. You're a big part of those crucial tech decisions.
Sounds like a very collaborative role, bridging that gap between the tech side and the business side.
100%. And then for the folks who love to mentor, who really want to shape the future of the field, there's that top-tier position, Senior ICT Capacity Planner.
The mentor, the guide, the one with all the answers, or at least a really good plan for finding them. What does that level actually involve?
At that point, you're less hands-on with the day-to-day capacity stuff. You're overseeing a whole team of planners, offering guidance, making sure the company's tech setup is ready for whatever's coming down the pipeline.
It's amazing how this career path lets you start with a specific skill set. Then you broaden your impact as you gain more experience, and bam, you can become a leader, a mentor, the whole package.
And it shows how much more important this field's becoming, right?
Yeah.
The faster tech changes, the more we need these skilled ICT capacity planners to keep everything running smoothly.
Speaking of that ever-changing tech landscape, I'd love to hear your take on how those emerging trends are shaking things up in the world of ICT capacity planning. What are you seeing?
Well, artificial intelligence and machine learning, they're total game changers. Not only are they creating tons of data, but they're also changing how we even use tech.
That's right. It's not just about planning for more users or more data points anymore. It's about figuring out how AI and machine learning will impact everything. Network traffic, data storage, even cybersecurity.
Exactly. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. You've got the huge shift towards cloud computing, the Internet of Things exploding. Plus, the need for really strong cybersecurity is only growing. All of this keeps ICT capacity planners on their toes, always adapting.
Sounds like you'd never get bored in this field. It's not just keeping the lights on, it's like
No.
designing the blueprints for the future of tech. figuring out how to build it
And
all.
that's what's so cool about it. It's constantly evolving, always new challenges popping up, new opportunities. To be successful, you have to be adaptable, think ahead, and never stop learning.
It's like being those explorers, but instead of uncharted lands, it's the whole digital world, right?
Totally. And that's why you can't just stop learning in this field. That's something this role catcher guide really drives home.
Which brings us back to that awesome guide. For anyone listening who's thinking, ICT capacity planning, that's my jam now, what's your biggest takeaway from the guide? What should they check out first?
Honestly,
Yeah.
it takes something super complex and makes it clear, gives you actual advice. It's not just a boring list of what the job is. It's like, here's what you need to know to actually do this. From tech skills to, how to talk to people, even those interview tips.
It's like the difference between having a map and having a guidebook, right? Speaking of guides, we've reached the end of our deep dive into ICT capacity planning.
This has been fun. Lots to think about with this one.
For sure. Big thanks to everyone listening for coming along on this journey with us. Hopefully you've learned a bit about the behind-the-scenes world of these digital architects.
Yeah, the folks making sure everything runs smoothly, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah,
Unsung heroes, almost.
absolutely. Until next time, everyone, keep those brains engaged, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.